I was and studied for 5 years animal psychology. And mate, I went into sales, I was the best salesman going, and then quite obviously transitioned into advertising because bullshit works so well when you understand humans. Good evening, everybody. Do I need this with this? Or is this, I do, thank you. Can never work this one out. I'm Malcolm Ball from Concept Associates. In fact, that's an old one. I'm actually from Concise Digital. Thanks, Jesse, first of all, for asking me to come up here and impart 34 years of work in advertising, online and various other bits and pieces in the best part of 12 minutes. But my 13-year-old daughter tells me that you can condense Shakespeare into 5 minutes, so I'm going for about 25. So I'll, no further ado, I'll just start going through it. Basically, I could stop here actually. I mean, the first thing, because we're all talking about the web, okay? So UX and UI really started back in the days when they were talking about product advertising, perhaps packaging and that side of it. We're now talking about the web. So effectively, UI and UX are two separate things, but they are combined. You need both to deliver, but they both have different disciplines. So as it says here, UI and UX design is the design of any user interface in which usability is just as important as the appearance. You get it? Well, I never did from that. But we'll go to the next one. I love this one. So UI is the saddle and the stirrups and the reins. UX is the feeling you get being able to ride that horse away into the distance with the hair flowing and all the rest of it. That, to me, is UI and UX, basically. But I'd just fall off the fucking horse. But anyway, so let's take it a little bit further. So UX, and it's the X, the E. It's all about. UX is about the experience. UX is about the user's experience. UX isn't just the experience on your website. It is everything that is your brand, your product, what you are to the user that's clicking that mouse. That's what UX is all about. So it's logical, and I could wind it up here, but I will do the other 47 slides. It's basically, you've got to know the user that is using your product, and you've got to know your product, and you've got to know them as if you weren't you. I'll try and explain that. If we can get, well, I could actually carry on. But basically UX, the whole thing about UX is, it is the experience. It is the brand. It is exactly the experience you're getting right now. So, cast me, and it's the Keep Space experience. I'm not investing. Where was I? What day is it? Yeah, no. Basically, we're talking about some of the key words in experience. User experience is the usability, the usefulness, the desirability, the solvability, the excellability, and the credibility. So basically, they are what go to make up the user experience, the actual, what the user thinks of what they're interfacing with and what the brand is all about. Let's go on to the next one. Let's not keep these people waiting. So, having said that, this is a bit more important. UX is not just about the usability. It might be the easiest website in the world to use and a beautiful experience, but if the product they get to at the end of the day, or part of the experience outside of the actual website isn't that good, they're not going to buy it. Let's just say they go all the way through. They get to the product, they deliver the product, it goes to somebody like Keep Space. Their systems go off awry, and you don't get it for 3 weeks. It's not your fault, but it is your brand. It's your product. And it looks like it's probably very likely to happen. I'll get you back. Back to where we were. UX has depth. Now, this is more relevant when we talk about UI. UI is a surface, it's the skin. It's the direct interface with the user. UX has depth because below the surface beats the heart. And that's what you're trying to get to with the experience, the overall experience of your product and brand, to basically make that user fall in love, stay with you, pass you on, come back again. It's about humans. I should have put that first. You know, taking my story further back, I was and studied for 5 years animal psychology. And mate, I went into sales, I was the best salesman going, and then quite obviously transitioned into advertising because bullshit works so well when you understand humans. And understanding lions and tigers is a lot about humans. It's a bit more difficult nowadays because all I had to worry about was male and females. I'm not going to offend anybody, but now there's about 16 different categories we've got to look at. But apart from that, it is about human beings. It's about understanding the people. And this is what I came back to from when I first started. UX is about understanding the people that use the interface with you, with your product, with your brand. UX never sits still because this is one of the big things. You know, you go to a big agency, you spend a lot of money, you get this great UX, you get this great journey. Then the world changes. You get something like COVID, or you get a change in technology. And it's a whole different experience. So it's great for agencies. It's why, as Jesse says, we make no money, but we make a bit. It's because things just keep changing. You've just got to keep up with it. You just got to keep up with the world. And you mustn't forget the UX is there to sell a product or service. In most cases, it's a product. So you've got to keep it real. There's absolutely no point. And this is the classic old marketing thing. But if you're trying to sell gold-plated exhaust pipes for second-hand Mini Coopers, you're basically not going to sell any. You've got to get real. You know, your product, you may have to slim it down if your marketplace, if your user, when you know them, has a price bracket. You actually don't ask them to come to you, you go to them. So that is a real big part of UX, is actually understanding that you have a business plan, that you have a bottom line, that you have an accountant, that however good you think your product is, if you don't know your user and you try and sell to that user bracket at a price that they won't take or a quality they won't take, it's no good. And that works both ways. You can be too low or you can be too high. So again, I could have done this in 12 seconds. It is all about knowing your user. Okay, so user experience, it's about the experience, and the experience is all about the user. And it's not your perception of the user, it's the user. Next. So then there's this thing called user interface design. Look, really this is about the interaction. So now when we come, and I'm just focusing this on websites and on e-commerce, it's the interaction. It's actually how the user interacts with your website and the flow through to your product. If it was in a product design, it's actually quite easy. You know, a switch has got to be able to switch up or down. And it's good to have an on or an off button, bits and pieces like that. But on a website, obviously, it's a little bit different. So there's a few key bits and pieces in here that I'll go through quickly. So when you're thinking about the UI side of it, and this is where I say that UI and UX go together, UI is a very specific discipline and it has a set of rules. But to use or to create good UI, user interface, you've got to understand the UX. You've got to understand what the hell you're trying to achieve and who you're dealing with. So the user wants to feel in control. Simple things like be forgiving. For God's sake, don't confuse the user that if they go wrong, what have they got to do? Let them go back and start again. It's a key one. Ease of navigation. I know we all say that, oh, it's all about the site map, it's the ease of navigation. Yeah, that is extremely important because that is the way the user works through it. But it's things like making sure you're predictable. Don't try and invent something brand new. Use what people expect to see. Cues, tell them where they're going next. If you've got a menu, make it simple, but make the journey sensible. Acknowledge actions. This is one that I love. Basically, if somebody presses a button and it puts something in the cart, tell them it's put it in the cart. I see so many sites where there is no messaging, there is no tick that comes up, there is no appearance of the cart, and you just don't realize how many users go, well, have I done it? Haven't I done it? Press it again, press it again, press it again. It's not, yeah. It's one of my favorite ones, and I'm sure it won't happen tonight, but it's one of my favorites. So acknowledging actions. Show when something is happening. This is the classic one. So especially when we're building stuff in e-commerce and you may have a complex product flow or purchasing flow and you're using an app and there is an action, something happens, something appears when you do conditional and it appears. For God's sake, if it's taking time, which it often does in Perth, but if it's taking time through the internet, have the spinning wheel. Everybody says, don't have the spinning wheel, but God, it's better than people going, it's broken. In that 0.3 of a second of the goldfish brain that says, I hate you, type of thing. Please both the novices and the experts. This is another one of my pet hates. People say, oh, but people understand, I understand my process flow. I understand that I have to choose a mask, one of these sleep apnea masks, and then I have to produce 3 other things that are conditional to that, et cetera, et cetera. So my user will understand they've got to actually have a mask, a clip, and a oozamafig. But they don't. Not everybody does. Most people, when they first come to purchase a product they haven't purchased before, are novices, so they've got to work their way through. They then become experts, and hopefully they come back and back and back. So basically, you've got to actually work out your UI so it covers everybody. Things like prompts, things like tutorials on it, but also the expert. So the novice will thank you for a pop-up that says, now press the red button. But the expert, if he sees that every time, is going to get sick to death. So there's got to be a way the expert can get past the novice side pathway. Next. Next. No. Back. So a user always wants to feel comfortable. How do you do that? Clear the clutter. This is the one thing that gets me. That's why I love these guys. Basically, they've thought out the process. They've thought out the branding. They've thought out the messaging. It's lovely to have somebody who can write. And it is fantastic. I see so many sites that are just full of clutter because you think, we've got to have that in there. We've got to have this in there. We've got to have the other. No, the messaging is simple and the messaging has to be on message and clean. Just clear out all the shit. It's amazing the stuff that you actually don't need in the process. Another one is if somebody's already filled in their details, don't ask for it again and again and again and again. That is a classic in all systems. Speak the user's language. What I mean there is not the language, but basically think about them, the user. So don't use jargon, don't use terms that we all understand or in your industry with your product you understand. Blue is blue, black is black, white is white. Give the user and think about it as the user and what terms they would use. Fitz law, and I've boiled this down to basically, if the button's big, you'll see it and you'll press it. If it's small, beautiful and subtle, it's a pain in the arse. One action is quicker than 2. If you can boil it down to do just 1 click and deliver, it's far better than having 2 clicks. I know that's not always easy, but I do see things where this process goes through where you end up with 6 clicks when you could get it down to 4. Think accessibility, and this is coming in, and it's more of the US and all the rest of it, but accessibility isn't just what we talk about accessibility for people who need help, but obviously you've got that. But there's things of accessibility that the general population need. Color blindness is one that everybody ignores, but don't use colors that the colorblind can't see because there's a large percentage of people out there. Use contrast, use simple stuff. Real world prompts, and I love this. I mean, the current trends are in iconography and all the rest of it. And the one that I love is the waste paper bin. Everybody's got chuck it in the trash on their computer, put it in the waste bin, and the icon is a waste paper bin. So if you start to think about prompts that actually you don't have to think about, you're going to help the world. Error messaging. Basically, if somebody does something wrong, tell them they've done something wrong. Don't leave them hanging. Yeah, and this is real people. This is the real human side of it. Is people don't want to think. People don't want to be intelligent. People just want to go, oh, it's the red button, boom, and hit it. I'm being derogatory, but I've worked in the industry too long. There's the 3-click rule that we all know. Everybody goes, oh yeah, the 3-click rule, but there really is a lot of merit behind that, unless there is some real reason not to go through it. Recognition, not recall. What do I mean there? Is don't make them think, just let them see the same icon all the way through. If they're doing 4 stages, tell them you're on 1, you're 2, you're 3, you're 4, and then you can go back to 3 and back to 4. Don't make them think about it. Visual clarity, a little bit more about the basics of don't clutter, but basically don't put a slab of text anywhere. I know I might be preaching to the converted, but if you can just put the summary, and then if you want to read more, expand it, and then use little things like group important information together, tables, or number things. You know, if you've got to do 1, 2, 3, 4, do 1, 2, 3, 4. I think I'm getting the finger at the moment. Is that 1 minute? Thank you. Well, I'm nearly there. Go. Next. Consistency, visual consistency, consistent functionality, expectations. Basically, if you've got a button that means buy it or move on, don't change the color of it as you go through. Make people feel comfortable if they know, oh, that's the yes button, that's no. Traffic lights, they know red means stop, green means go. Functionality, again, when a button is pressed, if the tick comes up and says you've done it, that's great, because they'll look for that, they'll understand that. Menus, if you've got menus on the top and you use side menus, make them correspond. Don't make people have to think, well, do I have to go back up here or is there something there? Expectations. This is the big one that I argue with my designers about all the time, is creativity is fantastic and pushing the boundaries is fantastic. But most shoppers have, as I call the goldfish span, and there is a convention in our industry. There is a convention that menus are always at the top, not at the bottom, not in the middle, and all the rest of it. Follow the basic conventions, because if you don't, you're just going to piss people off. That'll do. Thank you very much.